So we're going to kick off with Dawn Jones, who's going to share her expertise with us and give some advice for employment rights in the workplace. I'm hoping everyone is back online, back on their screens. And so welcome back, everyone. And Dawn, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay. Thanks, Dinah. Thanks for inviting me, and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dawn H. Jones, and I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So my background is in HR, and I now have a HR consultancy called Hope Place HR. I've got over 20 years experience in HR, mainly in the NHS. The reason why I started Hope Place was when my son was about 14, he was permanently excluded from school. So I took a break, a career break, to homeschool him. And during this time, if there was a light in his eyes, I could see that hope was present. And if his eyes were going dark, I realised hope was fading. So I thought to myself, what about if I offered training and development out into the community for people like my son, who had been permanently excluded from school, but were now on the fringes of society. And that's really where the idea for Hope Place came in, but it actually didn't come into real inception until about 3 years after I returned back to work. The consultancy itself now works with organisations and individuals. So I train a range of employees on HR issues, on toxic behaviours in the workplace, and so forth. So that's a bit about myself. Now, today's topic is called Know Your Employment Rights, because we know that there's a lot of discrimination in society. And the reality is there's also a lot of discrimination in the workplace. And I've seen the destructive effects of discrimination in the workplace, what it does to people, what it does to them mentally, physically, spiritually, what it does to them in terms of their career projections. And yes, we know that organisations have a duty to provide a safe working environment. They've got a duty to look after their employees, clearly, absolutely they have. But the reality is it's not happening. So we also need to look at what's our responsibility as employees in there. And one of the greatest levelers that I found discrimination is to know your employment rights, to educate and empower yourself about your employment rights. So today, I'm just going to take you to 3 points. I'm going to take you through the employment relationship, what it is, and why finding the right employer is crucial for your health and well-being. Secondly, your employment rights and why they vary according to what your status is within, what your legal status is in the employment relationship. And then I'm going to land on examples of how to exercise your rights in the workplace. So if you haven't got a pen and piece of paper, I will suggest you grab it, because I tend to actually drop bits in as well, things that won't be on my slides. And Dinah has a copy of the PDF slides, so I'm sure she could share them with you afterwards. Okay, so let's start by defining the employment relationship, okay? And the employment relationship is a legal connection between the employee and the employer. And I think we tend to forget this as employees. We just rock up to work, but actually it's a legal connection, and there are responsibilities on both the side of the employer and the side of the employee. Now, before I get into the specifics of the rights, of which there are many, I want to start off with just asking you to imagine that you're not yet employed, or you're thinking of moving to another organisation, okay? So we're going to start, before I tell you about the rights themselves, we're going to start showing you how to build your protection into your rights. So some key questions to ask is this organisation the best fit for me? Will I be respected here? Will I be safe here? What are the cultures and the values of the workplace, and do they indeed fit with my core values? my core principles. Notice I haven't said anything about money yet. Yeah, sometimes we'll go for the money, the pay, the progression, and all of the rest of that. But I can tell you, if you're working in a place that is hell on earth, you will not be in peace. You will, in fact, go to pieces. So, foundationally, ask yourself those crucial questions. Will I be safe here? Will I be respected here? Okay. Well, so in your checking of employers, right, you need to do some due diligence. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So employers do checks on their employees. They do what you call background checks, you know, references, DBS, and all these kinds of things, okay? Remember, this is a two-way relationship. So I want you to really think about doing background checks of your own, okay? You want to, just like any other relationship, what are you getting into? Just like any other relationship, what are you investing in? And just like any other relationship, is this worth my time and my effort? Does it fall below the standards I have set for myself? That's assuming that you set standards for yourself. So just make sure you have as well. So do your due diligence. Look at their webinar, but their website, but go beyond that. I don't care how glossy or slick it is, go beyond the website. Talk to people who have worked there. What have they got to say about that workplace? Read any staff surveys, any reports, you know, really dig in and do an in-depth internet search on them. I haven't put this here, but you can also go on to HMR. So I hope you got your pen and pieces of paper, because this is one of the ones that I'm going to drop in. You can also go on to hmrc.gov.uk tribunals, court tribunals, and you can actually see if the prospective employer has had any employment tribunal judgments, or they've been to employment tribunals, and see whether they've got any judgments against them. So that also might be part of your due diligence. But the reality is, by doing your due diligence, I guarantee you, I guarantee you, by doing your due diligence, you will help yourself. It's not a complete fail-safe, but you can begin to weed out organisations. Well, actually, I thought that looked good. I thought it looked fine on the surface of it, but actually, maybe it's not the place for me. All right. And unfortunately, a potential reality is, if you don't check out a prospective employer, it may be a costly and unpleasant experience. So let me tell you a story to illustrate my point. So an NHS organisation was placed on special measures by the Clinical Care Commission, Clinical Quality Commission, beg your pardon, after they found issues with things like poor patient care, bullying, harassment, and poor staff morale at one of the hospital sites. Now, this organisation really had a poor reputation, a well-known reputation, not just for those issues, but for governance issues overall. Now, a few years later, I contracted to work at that organisation. So I went in there for several months to work as a contractor, not as an employee. I knew about the organisation's poor reputation and the fact that they were still in special measures. But I was cool with that, because I'm not going in as an employee, I'm going in as a contractor, and it's for several months. So while I was there, there was a couple of issues that I had to navigate, but overall, I was able to work there with relative ease. A, because of my status, B, because I knew what I was getting into, and C, the head of service that I worked with, or worked for rather, was pretty supportive, and it was a really nice team. But I saw firsthand why the organisation was in special measures. For example, the director of that HR stood up at one meeting and said that we know that Black and ethnic minority staff are more likely to be disciplined and less likely to be promoted. So Black and ethnic minority staff are more likely to be disciplined and less likely to be promoted. There was another one, less likely to get the role as well that they applied for. And I sat there and I listened, and I wasn't angry. I thought to myself, at least this particular HR director has the guts to talk about inequalities publicly, especially during that period when senior leaders again across that particular sector were more apt to deny that they had any inequalities or discrimination within their organisation. So about 18 months later, a colleague told me she had successfully applied for a senior manager's role at this particular organisation. She was happy, she was thankful to be leaving a particular organisation that she worked for. And when she told me, I just thought, oh no. And I tried to warn her about the organisation's poor reputation. It wasn't just what I was saying, but it was publicly documented. I tried to warn her about the bullying. I tried to warn her about the toxic atmosphere, but she swept all that aside. She genuinely believed that this was an organisation in which she could thrive. Unfortunately, within several months, she was subject to bullying harassment, and I cannot begin to describe the great price she paid to her health and well-being. Now, eventually she got out and she's in a much better place now, but maybe, just maybe if she'd listened, she could have avoided that. So really do your due diligence before you walk into an organisation and give them your labour, really. Now, I don't want to give you the impression, right, that it's all doom and gloom. So for a bit of balance here, personally, I've worked with at least 2 organisations within the NHS, and we had senior managers of all ethnicities up to board level. In one of these organisations, one of our director of nursing is a black woman. So shout out to Southwark Primary Care Trust, who no longer exists, and my former colleagues. And my point is this: there are some good employers out there, and those employers really want to give a good employee experience that actually goes beyond lip service. They've embedded it into their culture, and they're consistently working to be a good employer. So it pays in terms of your time and your effort to seek them out. However, we still have a way to go. And I'm going to use the NHS as an example. I'm not picking on the NHS, but they are one of the organisations that have consistently collected equality data. So the NHS Workforce Equality Standard Report, so just some quick background, and it pays for all of us to know, because at some point, either ourselves or our family members will access the NHS at some point. So it's not just about people that work there. But the NHS has an equality standards, and every single NHS organisation and now clinical commissioning groups, they have to do individual equality reports on themselves. And you'll find it on their website. So you can go to your local trust, your local NHS organisation, and you will find their Workforce Race Equality Standard Report, or RESS for short. They then, every single organisation then collates this data, and I think it now goes to NHS England, and NHS England produce an overall report. And their 2022 report, the overall report, collated together stats over 5 years worth of data. And it consistently, every year on year, these are some of the consistent outcomes that Black staff are more likely to enter the disciplinary processes compared to their white counterparts, Black, minority and ethnic staff. They're more likely to be bullied. They're more likely to suffer discrimination. Now, if that wasn't enough, if you are a nurse or any profession that comes from a regulated background, if you then go on to be dismissed, there is also a likelihood that you then have to face your professional body. So it doesn't end there. It's terrible to go through a disciplinary. If it's upheld and it's for gross misconduct, then there's a high likelihood that you would also be referred to your professional body. Now, I also do some training for a trust in ethics for policy and process awareness training. And I came across some data from the University of Greenwich that said that one of the risk factors for being referred to the professional body in terms of Black, minority and ethnic staff is African males, and another one is if nurses trained internationally. So it's not just the NHS, it's not just the fact that Black, minority and ethnic staff are more likely to experience discrimination, more likely to be disciplined compared to their white colleagues, but bullying, harassment as an issue is an issue for all ethnicities. Now, someone put something in the chat around, that's the same for Met Police, and I was just about to get onto that. Unfortunately, you are going to find similar findings from the London Fire Brigade and the Met Police. So the London Fire Brigade, for example, have just completed a culture review, and they have found some really horrendous findings. I'll let you find it. It's on the website, publicly available. To their credit, I think it's their Commissioner Andy Rowe has agreed with all of the findings and is putting work in place to address that. Okay. So let's move on to employment rights. Now, significant numbers of employees are suffering because of perishing because they are failing to read about their employment rights. So what about rights? Well, rights are legal and moral entitlements that ensure fair treatment, okay? Now, rights vary according to your status, okay? So you can be an employee who works under contract of employment. You can be a worker. So when you think about workers, think maybe agency workers, those on 0-hour contracts, for example, okay? Or you could be an independent contractor, someone like me who is genuinely self-employed. So you need to find out what category you fall into. And I'm not going to go into all of it because time does not allow me, but just to let you know, there are 3 types of status. More actually, but we're just focusing on 3 here. Find out which one you belong to, and then those are your employment rights, okay? So I know it's a lot, but I just wanted to put it on one slide for you so you can literally do it as a checklist when you get your copy of the slides and work through, right? So as you can see, employees and workers have significant differences. So employees and workers have some rights in common. So the right to be accompanied at a grievance and disciplinary, for example. I know it's small, but you will get a copy of the slides. They have the right, employees and workers have the right to receive written particulars. That is, you probably, let me just say, so everyone can understand. Contract of employment, on the first day, got the right to be paid national minimum wage. And